Have you ever wondered if God wanted to speak to you, how would He do it? Not through a thundering voice from the sky, not through miracles or burning bushes. He chooses the nearest, simplest path, your own mind, where the smallest thoughts become the language of the divine. What if the reason you can't hear God is because He's been speaking too quietly for your noisy life? Picture this: it's 3 a.m, and you're scrolling endlessly through your phone, blue light replacing any inner light. And in that endless scroll, you've drowned out the one voice that's been trying to reach you all along. Among the countless noises in our heads, there is one voice that doesn't belong to fear or ego, but to the deepest part of the soul, the place that connects directly to the divine. But we've forgotten how to listen. We seek Him in churches and rituals, forgetting that sometimes He's speaking through every thought, every fleeting intuition, every moment of silence we ignore. When was the last time you sat in complete silence and felt safe? We've turned busyness into a religion, noise into a shield, and made ourselves deaf to the conversation that's been happening inside us our entire lives. This video isn't about religion. It's about remembrance, recognizing that you've been having a dialogue with something greater than yourself all along. You just never noticed. Think back to a moment when a quiet thought saved you. Maybe something whispered, "Wait," before you sent an angry text. Maybe you felt an urge to call someone who needed you right then. Maybe you heard, "Take a different route," and avoided an accident. These weren't coincidences. They were communications. Have you ever been sitting quietly when suddenly a faint thought arises, as if it doesn't belong to you, yet it makes you pause? A reminder, an idea, a subtle urge. Call that person. Stop. Forgive. It's not loud or commanding. It drifts like a gentle breeze, yet leaves behind strange peace, as if someone is speaking without words. Within every human being exists a divine center, what religion calls God, and depth, psychology calls the self. This isn't the ego, the mask we show the world. It's the source beneath the still point where your humanity touches something infinite. That's where the whispers are born, not through sound, but through feeling. We assume we control our thoughts, but until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. Some thoughts don't come from logic. They rise from the deep unconscious, where the collective memory of humanity resides, and where the divine is still speaking. Let me tell you about Elena, a high-powered executive whose life ran on notifications and calendar alerts. One Tuesday morning, as she stood on the subway platform, a soft voice in her mind said, "Turn back." She ignored it. The thought came again, more insistent. "Go home." Her chest tightened. She had an important meeting. But the feeling grew so strong that she finally returned to her apartment. When she opened the door, the smell of gas hit her immediately. The stove had been leaking for hours. She sat on her doorstep and cried, not from fear, but from recognition. "I knew someone was speaking to me," she said later. "The voice was inside my mind, but it wasn't mine." That's the frequency of the divine. You don't create it, you tune into it. Like a radio finding the right station. And God's frequency isn't found in noise or fear. It lies in the silence between two breaths, in the moment you release control and simply sit still. He can speak to you in the middle of ordinary life while working, washing dishes, or breathing. A thought softly comes, "Don't say that. It will hurt someone." A small voice says, "Forgive not for them, but for yourself." Each time you follow it, you're conversing with Him. Imagine your mind as the surface of the sea. On the surface, waves crash, winds blow. That's thought worry, the noise of the world. But if you dive deep enough beneath it, lies absolute stillness. There all voices dissolve, leaving only the breath of the soul. And it's in that depth, that God speaks not through words, but through presence. So the next time a thought makes you pause, fills you with peace, or tears, don't dismiss it. Stay, listen, and know that perhaps it is the voice of God. If God is still speaking, why do most of us never hear Him? The hardest thing to find today isn't opportunity, it's silence. Every day, we wake surrounded by notifications, messages, deadlines. And in that whirlwind, we think we're living. But we're so filled up that there's no longer space for the voice of the soul. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Perhaps the most terrifying thing isn't that God is silent, it's that we're no longer quiet enough to hear Him. We've weaponized busyness against the Spirit. We fill every moment with podcasts scrolling. We schedule every hour to avoid facing ourselves. Think back to the last time you sat still without your phone, without music. You may have felt uncomfortable, anxious, because in the silence, inner voices start to rise. What am I doing with my life? Am I truly happy? That's the call of the soul. But most of us quickly open social media and keep running. Let me tell you about Dr. Sarah Chen, a neurosurgeon who worked 80-hour weeks. When her father died, she buried grief in achievement. She took on more surgeries, more projects. She looked successful, but had panic attacks and empty moments. One afternoon, she sat in the hospital chapel waiting for a patient's family. 20 minutes of forced silence. And in that stillness, a thought arose. "You're running from me." She started crying, not from sadness, but from recognition. God had been trying to reach her for years, but she'd been too loud for Him to get through. This happens when we live entirely from the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. We confuse the applause of the world with the whisper of the soul. The more successful we become in others' eyes, the further we drift from the divine voice. The connection with God doesn't lie in rituals alone. It lives in the moment a person pauses to converse with their soul. Be still and know that I am God. In stillness, you stop seeking God outside and begin recognizing Him inside. Start small. 5 minutes every morning. No music, no phone. Just sit quietly and ask, "God, what do you want me to know today?" You might not hear anything right away, but if you're patient one day, a thought will come, and you'll know it wasn't from you. When you begin to hear that voice, soft, gentle, yet clear, another question arises. How do I know if it's God's voice and not my own? Because sometimes both come from within. Both sound familiar, but one brings peace, the other anxiety. One opens the heart, the other locks it in fear. Not every thought in your mind is truth. There exists an eternal dialogue between two forces, the ego, which is the constructed self-image, and the self, which is the divine center of the soul. Both coexist. Both speak, but only one speaks through light. The voice of the ego usually comes first, loudest, and most logical. It says, "Be careful. Don't trust anyone. You must prove yourself. If you fail, everyone will laugh at you." But the voice of the soul comes later, light as breath. Do the right thing even when no one is watching. Forgive. Love without needing to win. This is the conversation between the self, and the whole one side tries to control the other, only wants you to return home. You can feel the difference not through logic, but through energy in your body. When the ego speaks, you shrink. Your chest tightens. Your breath shortens. When the soul speaks, you expand. Your heart opens as if a small beam of light passes through your chest. Understanding Carl Jung empath and personal development means learning to distinguish these two voices, recognizing which one serves your wholeness and which one serves your fear. Let me tell you about Dr. Amara, a cardiac surgeon. During a 12-hour surgery, everything started spiraling out of control. The patient's vitals were dropping. Under pressure, her hands began to tremble. A harsh voice in her head shouted, "You're going to kill him. You're not good enough." She tried to ignore it, but the more anxious she became, the louder it grew. Then, in the middle of the chaos, another voice appeared, very soft. "Breathe. Trust your hands." "Doctor." Amara paused, closed her eyes for just 3 seconds, took a deep breath, and in that moment, all tension vanished. Everything became clear. The surgery succeeded. When she told the story later, she said, "I don't know who spoke to me, but I knew it wasn't my fear. It was something that loved me." That's the voice of the self, the divine essence within each person, where God and human meet. It's not that he's outside, it's that he's speaking through you. But the subtlety of this path lies here. The ego can imitate God's voice too. It knows how to make you believe you're being guided, while you're only rationalizing your desires and fears. You can hear it in phrases like, "I must show them that God is with me," or "I'm sure this is my divine mission because I want it." But God's real voice never forces. It never rushes or demands. It only invites. Spiritual maturity is learning to know who is speaking. The ego speaks to control. The soul speaks to free. If you want to know who's speaking in your mind, don't ask, "What is it saying?" Ask, "How does it make me feel? Does it make you smaller or larger? Does it close you down or open you up? Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." When you begin to look within, you'll find 2 voices speaking at once, one fearful and calculating, the other gentle and wise. And the quality of your life will be determined by which voice you follow. After learning to distinguish between God's voice and the ego's, you'll realize that sometimes he doesn't speak in words at all, because words belong to the language of the mind, while God often speaks in the language of symbols, coincidences, dreams, and events that seem random but hold uncanny meaning. This is synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, when outer events mirror the inner state of the soul in ways probability can't explain. The unconscious doesn't exist only within the individual, it's also collective, where all souls are connected through archetypal patterns. And it's at this intersection that God speaks not through sound, but through meaning. A recurring dream, a number appearing again and again, a song playing at the exact moment of confusion. All are his way of whispering, "I am here." Let me tell you about Maria, an artist from Barcelona. After a devastating heartbreak, she lost her faith in life and stopped painting. One night, she dreamed she was lost in a dark forest when a white owl flew past her. The next morning, scrolling through her phone, she saw an artwork suggested on Instagram, the exact same white owl. She found it strange but ignored it. The next day, while heading home, a bus passed by with a giant picture of a white owl printed on it. That evening, she received an email from a gallery inviting her to join an exhibition titled "The Owl of Transformation." Maria burst into tears. She said, "I realized God didn't tell me to paint again. He sent a symbol, and when I was quiet enough to notice, I knew he was saying, 'Live again.'" Symbols are the language of the soul beyond logic. Modern people believe only what's rational deserves trust, but spirituality doesn't operate through linear reasoning. Dreams aren't coincidence and intuition. These are the grammar of God. Synchronicity isn't a miracle, but a sign. Like when you're struggling with a decision, and suddenly a line on a billboard or a song lyric says exactly what you needed to hear. When the soul longs deeply for something, the universe mirrors it back. Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. And indeed, people with rich inner lives experience synchronicity more often, not because they're superstitious, but because they're awake. They observe, feel, and notice the hidden threads woven through everyday life. Think of Joseph in the ancient story, betrayed, sold into slavery, imprisoned. Yet he trusted that an invisible hand was weaving everything together. Years later, he became ruler of Egypt, saving the very brothers who'd wronged him. Looking back, he said, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." A perfect example of synchronicity, everything happening in the right way at the right time, guiding the soul home. When you live unaware of these symbols, life feels random, fragmented. But when you awaken every small detail, a feather on the road, a stranger's glance, a passing phrase becomes sacred language. God doesn't need thunder to speak. He only needs you to look closer. So when you notice repeating signs, don't dismiss them. Pause and ask, what does this mean? Not every coincidence is God's voice, but every voice of God comes through synchronicity, arriving exactly when you need it in the way you can understand. There are times when you don't hear God in prayer, don't see signs, only emptiness. You wake up unmotivated. Things that once brought joy feel distant. You think you're falling apart. But sometimes, in that very moment, God is speaking. Not through words, but by quieting all the noise. He doesn't take your joy. He removes what hides his voice. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. When the soul prepares to enter a new level of awareness, it must break old structures, beliefs, identities, roles you've clung to. Just like a seed must crack open to sprout, pain is the sign of being born again. Because pain doesn't only wound, it empties. And in that emptiness, the divine can enter. When belief systems collapse, you're forced to turn inward where the soul waits. This is the center shift, when one stops living from the outer ego and begins living from the inner essence. What you thought was the end is the beginning, where silence becomes prayer and suffering becomes the doorway to grace. Professor Catherine Keating built her entire identity on academic achievement. One administrative mistake led to her suspension. For months, she fell into despair. One night, she dreamed she was holding a candle in darkness. When the flame went out, a voice said, "The light doesn't come from the candle, but from you." She awoke, filled with strange peace. I realized I'd lived my whole life seeking recognition. But when everything fell apart, I saw that God hadn't taken anything from me. He only removed what blocked me from myself. This understanding is central to Carl Jung empath and personal development, recognizing that pain isn't punishment, but transformation. Every spiritual crisis is an invitation to reconnect with the divine center. Pain doesn't destroy the soul, it destroys the ego. When the ego cracks, the mind opens, and God's voice can finally be heard. Modern neuroscience confirms this. After major loss or trauma, the brain reorganizes its neural networks. After every deep suffering, both brain and soul restructure toward greater compassion and awareness. Pain is how the soul grows. So if you are in pain today, don't conclude that God is silent. Maybe He's speaking another language, the language of breaking. While you think you're losing everything, you're being taught to hear with your heart. Let every crack in you become where light enters. In truth, God doesn't only speak in sacred moments in dreams or coincidences. He speaks through your everyday actions, through how you face life. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. In other words, the way you live is your answer to God. Hearing His voice isn't a skill, it's a way of living. Every time you're honest with yourself, forgive without being asked, or choose love over judgment, you're listening to Him. Every time you say no to what no longer aligns with your soul, even if it disappoints others, you're honoring that divine dialogue. Because God doesn't speak for you to hear, He speaks for you to live differently. True consciousness forms only when one begins to live according to their inner knowing. You can read 1,000 spiritual books, meditate for hours, But if you keep betraying your soul in daily life, pretending to be fine, when you're not pleasing others, when your heart resists, then you haven't truly listened. Let me tell you about Marianne, an interior designer in Los Angeles. For years, she followed the perfect plan: successful husband, beautiful home, thriving career. Yet every morning, when she looked in the mirror, she saw an exhaustion she couldn't name. "I pray every day," she said, "but I never hear God." One Sunday at church, she sat in silence. No voice came, only a small thought. If you no longer believe in this life, start again with what makes you feel alive. The next day, she quit her job, moved back to her hometown, and started painting her childhood dream. Her friends asked, "Are you crazy?" She smiled. "I'm just listening." Years later, her paintings were exhibited internationally. But she said, "What matters isn't that they sold. It's that I came back to life again." When your actions reflect what your soul knows is right, you no longer need to seek God's voice. You become that voice. Because God doesn't speak through promises, but through action. This is the heart of Carl Jung, empath, and personal development, becoming whole by living authentically. When you choose honesty, even if it costs you comfort, when you choose compassion instead of anger, He is speaking through you. Listening isn't just a meditative state. It's a way of being. A truly listening person doesn't need to declare their faith. It radiates from their gestures, their eyes, the way they move through the world, without losing their inner stillness. Think of it like a piano. If the soul isn't tuned, no matter how skilled the musician, the sound will distort. But when your soul aligns with the divine, when thought, emotion, and action vibrate at the same frequency, life begins to play like a melody that God Himself performs. You stop seeking Him because every note you live, every breath you take, already is Him. In history, Mother Teresa embodied this truth. She didn't preach God through grand speeches, but through service, tending to the dying, washing the forgotten, loving the unloved. When asked if she hears God speak, she smiled. "I hear Him in every person I touch." She didn't wait for signs from heaven. She became the sign. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Once you understand that listening is no longer about hearing something external, it's about living every moment in rhythm with Him, then you'll see God never left. He's always been here. So if you're still searching for His voice, don't just look up to the sky. Look into your life, into every small act, every daily choice. If you live with presence, honesty, and compassion, you're not just hearing Him, you're letting Him live through you. And then you'll realize God doesn't just speak to you, He sings through your very life. When a person truly listens, they no longer need to prove their faith. They simply are. And in that presence, those around them feel peace without a single sermon. God doesn't need perfect people. He needs willing souls. What makes you His channel isn't holiness, but openness. When your soul opens, everything begins to align. You meet the right people at the right time. You no longer force things because they start flowing through you like a river that doesn't strive, yet nourishes the forest. This is union with the self. You no longer serve God as something separate. You become the service itself. A hospital nurse once said, "Every day I watched someone die. I prayed for strength, but never heard anything. One day, a dying patient held her hand and said, 'You don't need to speak. When you're here, I feel peace.' She realized God was speaking through me the whole time. From that day, she stopped praying to hear Him. She lived with love, patience, and presence. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Perhaps it's also the most sacred. When you accept yourself fully, no longer dividing me from Him, you become the instrument God can play. When people live in love and presence, their being synchronizes with others. Love becomes contagious, a divine resonance. Think of a candle. When lit, it doesn't try to shine. It simply is. And in being itself, it dispels darkness. You don't need to convince anyone to believe. Just be the candle in the night, and whoever stands near will see the light. You no longer pray, "Lord, speak to me," but whisper, "Please speak through me." His voice was never far. It's been waiting for a place to echo. And that place is the human heart. God isn't only speaking to you through your mind. He's trying to speak to the world through you. Let your life become a living prayer, so that when others look at you, they see a glimpse of the divine. The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference. At that moment, you no longer just hear his voice. You are his voice in human form. You don't need to retreat from the world or reach some special spiritual state. He's been with you long before you began to search. God doesn't speak through thunder, but through subtle intuition. When you are silent, when you live truthfully, when you choose love over fear, he is speaking through you. If today your mind suddenly feels calm or a quiet thought brings peace, know this, it's not random. Perhaps he's whispering, "I'm still here, still guiding you." Share this message with someone who needs that same call. Let every thought you live, every action you choose, be a gentle answer sent back to him. Because God never stopped speaking. He was waiting for you to be quiet enough to answer.